You wake up 4 minutes before the alarm every morning. Not because a podcast told you 5 a.m. builds character, but because your body stopped needing an alarm the day it stopped needing a boss's permission to rest. You sleep at 9:45. You get up at 5:52. Nobody applauds a body that finally trusts its own clock. The house is a 1,760 square foot brick ranch on a street with no name recognition. You bought it 13 years ago for $196,000. Today, it appraises at $410,000. It's been paid off for 4 years. You are worth $3.1 million. Your mail carrier doesn't know this. Your dentist doesn't know this. Your cousin, who financed a boat he uses 6 days a year, definitely doesn't know this. He asked you last month if you were doing okay financially. You said you were fine. You were not lying, you were just not translating. You lie there a moment longer than necessary, listening to the house do nothing. No creak of debt in the walls, no mortgage breathing down the hallway, just a furnace clicking on and a dog somewhere down the street barking at a delivery truck. This is the sound wealth actually makes. It sounds like nothing at all. 13 years ago, the same room had a different sound. A stack of bills on the nightstand you dreaded opening. A calculator app you checked more than any social media account. A specific tightness in your chest every time the phone rang with a number you didn't recognize. You don't miss that version of the room, but you remember it clearly enough to never take this silence for granted. You put on the same gray Henley you own in triplicate. Not poverty, not eccentricity, just one less decision the world gets to charge you for. Your closet has 11 items in it total. Every item earns its place by never being discussed. Nobody has ever complimented your outfit. Nobody has ever needed to. Before coffee, you do 15 minutes on the back porch. No app tracking it, no subscription attached, no influencer narrating your form. Just a stretch routine you learned from a library book a decade ago and never bothered upgrading. Health, like money, compounds quietly for the people who stop treating it like content. Coffee, home brewed, 34 cents a cup. The drive-thru version costs $6.10. That's $2,100 a year, but the money was never really the lesson. The lesson was becoming someone who calculates once and never relitigates. While it brews, you check the number. 90 seconds, same as every day. $2.2 million sits in 3 funds: Total Market, International, and a bond fund that started pulling its weight around your 44th birthday. You haven't sold a share in 16 years. Not in the crash that took 35% in 6 weeks. Not in the year everyone swore the whole system was a Ponzi scheme wearing a suit. You just kept buying every payday, like feeding a machine that never says thank you and never needs to. $410,000 sits in home equity. Deed in a fireproof box beside your passport and your mother's rosary. $610,000 sits in a taxable brokerage, the bridge that lets you walk away before the government says you're allowed to. $78,000 sits in cash, doing nothing on purpose. Cash isn't an investment. Cash is the reason you never have to sell an investment on its worst day. And $41,000 sits in a custodial account for your godson, who has no idea it exists. A separate $161,000 sits in a retirement account you can't touch for another 11 years. And you've made peace with that. Money you can't reach is money you can't ruin. Add it up, and the number is almost embarrassing to say out loud, so you never do. Not because you're ashamed of it, because saying a number out loud invites a conversation you have no interest in having. One where people either resent you or start asking questions you'd rather answer with actions than confessions. You've watched what happens to people once a number gets out. Suddenly, you owe explanations for choices that were never anyone's business. Suddenly, every request for help comes wrapped in resentment about what you could obviously afford. Silence isn't secrecy. It's just a tax you refuse to pay. You shut the laptop. The market will do whatever it does today, and you will do nothing about it. That nothing took 11 years to master and cost you every impulse you used to trust. Somewhere, a stranger on television will call today's dip a crisis. It will not be a crisis. It will be Tuesday. You drive a 2018 Corolla with 96,000 miles, bought 2 years used, paid in full. At the light on Ferris and Ninth, a matte black pickup pulls beside you. $71,000. Financed, you'd guess, somewhere around $1,050 a month for 6 years. You're not laughing at him. You're doing math he's never done. $1,050 a month invested at 8% for 25 years is roughly $960,000. That truck isn't a truck. It's a future he traded for a paint job. The light turns green. He's gone before your coffee cools. You proceed at the exact speed limit, radio off, thinking about nothing in particular, which is its own kind of luxury. On the way in, you stop for gas and grab milk you forgot yesterday. The clerk upsells you a $4 energy drink bundled with a receipt lottery ticket. You decline both, not out of principle, just habit. 90 seconds later, you've forgotten the interaction completely. This is a difference nobody names. Poor decisions take up rent in your head long after they're made. Good ones evaporate instantly, which is exactly why nobody brags about them. At the pump, a man in his 20s is filling up a leased sedan on the phone, visibly stressed about something financial you can only half hear. Insurance maybe, or a late fee. You don't know him. You'll never know him. But you remember that exact posture from your own 20s. The specific way debt makes your shoulders round forward, like you're bracing for a hit that hasn't landed yet. You still work, operations manager, 13 years in, $108,000 a year. Enough to matter, not enough to explain a net worth 7 figures past your salary. Nobody glances at the guy with the cracked phone screen and thinks parking garage money. You work because the job doesn't own you anymore. Every paycheck now is surplus, not survival. And surplus changes how you sit in a meeting. When your VP proposes something reckless, you say plainly, that won't work, and here's why. And you say it the way only someone with nothing to lose says anything. 8 months ago, they offered you a director title, 25% more money, triple the headaches. You said no. Your boss looked personally offended. The raise would have moved your retirement up by 3 months. The stress would have taken more than 3 months off the other end. Late morning, a vendor stops by pitching a new expense tracking software to the department, the kind with a free trial and a countdown timer designed to manufacture urgency. You watch him work the room the way salespeople work rooms. Scarcity, social proof, a limited time discount that will mysteriously still be available next week. You've seen this exact performance 100 times, aimed at other people's paychecks, never quite landing on yours. Not because you're smarter, because you stopped being an audience for urgency a long time ago. Real financial decisions, you've learned, never come with a countdown clock attached. Your director asks you to sit in on a budget review that runs 40 minutes long. Mostly people defending line items nobody will remember by Friday. You contribute exactly twice, both times with a number instead of an opinion, because numbers end arguments that opinions only extend. Someone thanks you afterward for keeping it simple. You don't tell them simple took 2 decades to learn. Mid-morning, a coworker catches you refilling your water bottle. Priya, 24, whip smart, quietly panicking. Can I ask something dumb? You always seem calm about money. She's $11,000 deep in car debt and can't fully account for how. You don't lecture her. You remember being 24 and thinking debt was just what adulthood cost. 2 sentences fixed everything for me. Pay yourself first before you can touch it. Never carry a balance on anything that doesn't grow. That's the whole inheritance. She asks if it's really that simple, half hoping you'll say no because simple feels like it should cost more than 2 sentences. You tell her simple and easy aren't the same word. Simple just means there's nothing left to explain. Easy is a different problem entirely, one that takes years, not seconds. You don't tell her your number. You never tell anyone your number. But that evening, you sent her the same 3-chapter PDF someone sent you at 26. And somewhere, a quiet transfer of wealth happens that no bank will ever record. Lunch is rice and lentils from last night, $1.10 a serving. Your team orders $17 delivery and complains about rent in the same sentence. You used to feel superior about this. You don't anymore. Somewhere past your first $600,000, superiority burned off and something calmer took its place. You're not eating leftovers to prove a point. You genuinely stopped wanting the $17 version. That's the part no one can package into a course. Past a certain point, restraint stops being restraint and just becomes taste. While you eat, an email lands from the insurance company. Auto and home renewal up 6% this year. No explanation offered or expected. Most people call this an outrage. You call it Tuesday's line item. You don't negotiate out of anger, you negotiate out of habit. One call, 15 minutes, a competing quote pulled up beforehand, a polite request to match it. They shave off $340 for the year. You don't feel triumphant, you feel like someone who closed a cabinet door that was left open. This, too, is a job nobody sees. Wealth isn't just built once, it's maintained in 15-minute increments nobody will ever put in a highlight reel. Your phone buzzes at 1:40. Not a broker, you don't have one. It's your brother. His transmission died. $1,900 he doesn't have this month. You hear the specific tightness of someone rehearsing an apology for a bill that isn't their fault. Send me your account. Give me an hour, you say before he finishes explaining. It's not a loan. He tries to argue. You let it go quiet instead. The math, $1,900 is 0.06% of what you have. For him, it was a decision between a repair shop and a payday loan at 30% interest that would have cost him $2,800 over 18 months. No index fund has ever paid you a return like deleting a crisis from someone you love before it metastasizes. An hour later, he texts a photo of the car back on the lift. Then a single line, "I'll pay you back, I promise." You don't reply to the promise. You reply with a photo of your dog asleep on the porch, because the promise was never the point, and you'd rather he know that without you having to say it. Mid-afternoon, a weak moment. A jacket you've wanted for 2 years drops to $340. You could buy it the way other people buy gum. You add it to the cart. Then the old ritual. 3 questions, same order every time. Will I still want this in 30 days? Am I buying the object or the feeling? Whose eyes am I actually buying it for? The third question is the one that always wins. You close the tab, not from willpower, from recognition. The espresso machine passed this test 2 years ago and gets used every single day without a flicker of guilt. That's what the filter is for. It doesn't block spending. It blocks spending you'd regret in a month you haven't lived yet. Someday, someone will find the number and assume a stock tip, a lucky bet, a rich uncle. There wasn't one. At 23, on a $38,000 salary, you started putting away 14%, and it felt like losing a limb. Every raise after that, half went to living, half went to the machine, until the machine was quietly eating 30% of a number you never once bragged about. You weren't a genius investor. You were an elite non-interrupter. 22 years of not touching it. That's the entire secret. And the secret is that it isn't one. It's a long hallway with no windows and nobody clapping while you walk it. Compound growth only performs its trick for the people boring enough to ignore it. Your first $100,000 took 6 years. The second took 2.5. The last $100,000 before you crossed 7 figures took 4 months. The hallway has no windows, but it does have a door. And the door opens on an ordinary Tuesday exactly like this one. Late afternoon, on the drive home, you swing by the grocery store with an actual list, written the old way, on paper, because a list is a contract with your future self, and a cart is a negotiation with your worst impulses. You buy what's on it. You do not buy the seasonal display of things nobody needed until they saw them arranged attractively under good lighting. The total comes to $61 for the week. The woman ahead of you spends $340 and apologizes to the cashier for none of it being coupons. Nobody apologizes for spending anymore, only for saving. You've never understood when that flipped. At the self-checkout, a kid, maybe 19, bags his own groceries next to you. 3 energy drinks and a bag of chips, paying with a card that gets declined twice before finally going through. He laughs it off, too loud, the way people laugh when it isn't actually funny. You say nothing. There's nothing to say that wouldn't sound like a lecture, and lectures never once changed anyone at 19. Some lessons only take when they're chosen, not given. You pull into the driveway at 5:50. Your neighbor, Tom, waves from his porch. New camper, 2 newer SUVs, a home equity line he tapped last spring for a pool. Tom out-earns you. By every visible measure, Tom is winning. You'd bet Tom couldn't survive 5 months without his next paycheck. You're not better than Tom. His pool makes real memories with his kids, and there's no spreadsheet that captures that. But you also watched your own father get let go at 56 with $6,000 in the bank, and the look on his face you never wanted to see twice. At 18, you made a promise in that exact moment, and every identical Henley, every kept Corolla, every automatic transfer since has just been you keeping it. The neighbors see a modest house and a 10-year-old sedan. They can't see the promise. Wealth nobody can see is still wealth. Wealth everyone can see is frequently just well-financed noise. Dinners with your partner. You didn't build any of this solo. 19 years ago, on your second date, she told you she had $4,000 saved and a 5-year plan. And something in you quietly decided this was the person. 3 real money arguments in 19 years, resolved the same way each time. A standing Sunday meeting, 20 minutes, coffee, numbers on the table. No ambush, no hidden accounts. Money fights in a relationship are rarely about math. They're about surprise. You removed the surprise years ago. Tonight, she mentions almost in passing that her coworker just bought a lake house as a smart investment, financed at a rate that makes your stomach turn slightly. You both let the comment pass without a comment of your own. Some things don't need a rebuttal. They need time to reveal themselves. After dinner, you walk the same 1.8-mile loop you've walked for a decade. A podcast host asked the guest today, "What's your number?" You passed yours $700,000 ago. Nothing happened. No confetti, no different Tuesday. The number just became a bigger number. And you were still the same person on the same loop. That's the part that arrives after the money, not before it. The finish line was never real. What the money actually bought showed up gradually, years earlier. The day you stopped flinching at the mail. The day a layoff rumor at work didn't cost you sleep. The day you said no to the director title and slept fine anyway. Wealth was never the number on the screen. Wealth is the number of problems that no longer have teeth. Transmission, water heater, downturn, root canal, solved, 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 solved. You're not a millionaire so much as a machine that quietly converts money into calm. And that's the entire business model. Halfway around the loop, you passed a house that's been for sale for 4 months. Price dropped twice. A family clearly stretched past what the monthly payment ever should have allowed. You don't know their story. You just recognize the shape of it because you've watched it happen to people you love more than once. The math never lies. It just waits patiently for people to stop lying to themselves first. Before bed, you open the same worn ledger you've kept for 2 decades, an actual notebook, because there's something about handwriting a number that a screen has never replicated. You write today's total. Earned $415, spent $61, wired $1,900 to your brother, declined the $340 jacket, saved $340 on an insurance renewal you almost didn't bother negotiating. The math nets out strange and human and entirely unremarkable, which is exactly the point. Nobody will ever read this notebook but you, and maybe, decades from now, your godson, if he ever wonders how quiet compounding actually looks written down in a stranger's handwriting. You flip back a few pages, not out of nostalgia, just curiosity, and land on an entry from 11 years ago. The numbers were smaller then, the handwriting shakier, the doubt on the page almost visible between the lines. You don't feel proud reading it. You feel something quieter than pride, something closer to recognition. That version of you had no idea it was already winning. Neither, probably, do you right now, about some slower thing still compounding in the dark. You think briefly about all the versions of this evening happening in other houses, on other streets right now. Someone opening a bill they're afraid of. Someone closing a laptop after checking a balance that made their stomach drop instead of settle. Someone deciding, for the first time or the 100th, to start the machine anyway. Badly, imperfectly, on a salary that feels too small to matter. It always feels too small to matter. That's exactly the part nobody tells you survives long enough to become the whole story. You read for 20 minutes before bed. Tomorrow, one meeting. A haircut, your godson's birthday next weekend. One day he'll open an envelope explaining what's been compounding since before he could talk, and that will be the single loudest thing your money will ever do. Nobody clap today. Nobody knows. Tomorrow the market opens. It will rise or it will fall, and you will do nothing about it. Beautifully, again, because real money, once it's finally, permanently yours, stops needing to be loud. And so, eventually, do you.